If your nonprofit doesn't know about this new federal filing requirement, you may be at risk for huge penalties and even jail time. So in this video, I'm going to break down whether nonprofits have to file the Beneficial Ownership Information Report, which is a new federal reporting requirement for businesses. And if you are a nonprofit and you've heard that you don't have to worry about it, that may not be exactly true. So I'm going to share 3 scenarios where you really need to pay attention and make sure that you do your due diligence. So this video is a shorter version of a longer video I recorded. I'm linking it above if you want to check it out. I just gave some history about the reporting requirement, where this came from, all the details you need to know. But in this video, I'm getting right to the point about what it means for nonprofits and clearing up confusion about whether or not nonprofits really do have to worry about this report, whether they have to file anything. So let me just say this, the constitutionality of this requirement is being challenged and being questioned in court as we speak, as of the recording of this video, which is early 2025. So the information that I'm sharing is based on something that was put into law like almost 4 years ago. So it's important to share that because if it's been in place for so long, then it may still be in place no matter what happens with the courts. But there is a possibility that this may be struck down and that this process may change and may be different. So just keep in mind that I'm sharing information that's already been decided, already been passed into law, but it may shift and it may change based on the court cases that are pending as we speak. So, do you have to fill out the Beneficial Ownership Information Report? If you are tax exempt, you don't have to. There are several types of business entities that are not required to file this report. One of those exempt categories is for tax exempt organizations. So, if your nonprofit has a federal tax exempt status, you are exempt from filing this report. But here's the thing, not every nonprofit is tax exempt. And also, there's a scenario or two where you do have to file a report even if you are a nonprofit. So let me break those down next. Number 1, if you are a new nonprofit, and I'm especially talking about nonprofits that get started in 2025 because there's a difference between those that were started in 2024 and then those before 2024. If you are starting a nonprofit in 2025 and your goal is to be tax exempt, then you may have to file a report in the meantime because you only have 30 days to file your report. And most people who start their nonprofits do not get their tax exempt status so quickly. That's kind of rare. So there may be a gray area where you're required to file this federal report and you're pending your tax exempt status, or you haven't even applied for tax exempt status yet because maybe you're getting your ducks in order, maybe you're trying to figure out somebody to do it for you, or you're just trying to get your money up, right? So there are some circumstances where you will delay getting your tax exempt status, and it's going to take more than 30 days in most circumstances anyway. In those cases, you're still required to file the Beneficial Ownership Information Report because more than likely if you are a corporation, it's still a requirement. So if you are super new, I would just go and fill out the report the best to your abilities because some of it does not apply when it talks about owners. Nonprofits don't have owners, but do the best you can. And if you have questions, reach out directly to the Financial Crimes Enforcement Network because they're responsible for collecting this information. Here's the second scenario you want to think about. If you lose your tax exempt status and it goes over 180 days. After 180 days, you may be at risk for penalties. And what happens, unfortunately, for a lot of people who lose their tax exempt status, especially if they're new and they're small, they don't know. They don't know they've lost it. And they may get a letter in the mail, but even if they get a letter in the mail, they may not pay attention to it. And then when they realize that their status has been revoked, it's probably been 6 months since it happened. So that's another gray area too. If you lose your tax exempt status, you may be at risk of penalties if you don't file after that. Now, you may do the work to reinstate your status, which is completely acceptable for you to do, but that's still a gray area and it may flag your organization if you don't file this report. So I mentioned before that there are certain exemptions for people to file. So if you don't have any activity or you're not really raising any money for your nonprofit And even if you're not tax exempt, you may be exempt from filing the report because you're a dormant organization. I just came up with that term. But if you look at the FinCEN website and you'll see what I'm sharing on the screen above, you'll see what I'm talking about. If you have not participated in any business activity and you haven't brought in any money, you may be exempt regardless, whether or not you lose your status, whether you have it and keep it, whatever. So just watch that carefully, especially for those who have lost their tax exempt status or may be at risk for losing your tax exempt status. If you're confused about that, about how that could happen and you would never know it, or you wouldn't know until the IRS reaches out to you, I did a video on this. I talk about automatic revocation. So check out the video I'm linking above for more info. For those two scenarios that I just talked about, if you file the report, but then eventually you do become tax exempt, then there is a possibility for you to go back to the website and update the information so that they know that you are exempt. So don't forget to do that piece, that once you do get your tax exempt status, to go back and update everything. The third scenario is when a nonprofit owns a business. So there are circumstances where a nonprofit has established another type of business, maybe an LLC or a corporation that's under the nonprofit. So the nonprofit controls what happens with that business. Well, that's a separate business, and because it's a business, if it meets the eligibility requirements for this beneficial ownership information report, then you got to file it. So your nonprofit may be filing a report not for your nonprofit, but for the business that you actually own. If you're questioning this right now and saying nonprofits can't own businesses, what are you talking about? Yes, they can. And in certain circumstances, if they don't want to lose their tax exempt status by doing certain business or merchant-like activities that don't have anything to do with their mission or their charitable purpose, a lot of times what they'll do is create a separate entity, and that entity will pay taxes because it's a for-profit. And so in that situation, that's when you need to file a report for that separate entity. The biggest takeaway of all is that this is a new requirement, and with anything, with the rollout of a federal law, it's always going to be bumpy and there may be tweaks along the way. So watch this carefully, and as I hear updates, I will update you all on this channel, especially from the perspective of nonprofits, so you're on your P's and Q's. If you need help starting a nonprofit, make sure you comment checklist below. I will send you a free startup checklist so you can see what the process is, so you're not missing anything. Also, if you just need help with your nonprofit, especially around raising money, visit me at bossonabudget.com. I have resources there to help you get startup money. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.